Take a sip of my coffee. Now we're ready. What is up, beautiful people? It is your boy, Samuel Maria, and I'm back like the 4-5. And you are now tuning in to another episode of the Back to the Game Sportscast, NBA Playoffs Edition. All right, what's up, beautiful people? Welcome back. I know it's been a while. Not that anyone or many people are watching, but if you have tuned into some of the episodes and you're probably like, what happened to that guy? Well, you know, this thing, I'm still figuring out the flow, and I got a lot of other things happening within my career, my personal life. It's just turned out to be a very busy time of year. But also, the biggest thing is the sports news cycle wasn't really piquing my interest, and something that I've been trying to stick to with the sportscast is try not to get caught up in talking about what everyone else is talking about just for the sake of it. I want to make sure that this sportscast is tailored to what piques my interest, and I think that if I'm true to that, that will eventually be what sticks, if it does stick. I want to kind of like what I'm talking about and be into it. And a lot of the news cycle was a lot of drama, gossip. You know, it wasn't about the games in itself. And that's fun to talk about, but I don't want to make that about this. And then it was college basketball, which is cool, but I don't know if anyone watched that national championship game. That was terrible basketball. I mean, the kids are playing super hard, but the stage is so large. I mean, they play in those arenas, and not arenas. They play in those stadiums, the Final Four, and the kids, they're not as highly skilled as the NBA guys. So for me, college basketball, especially now that I'm a little older, these kids could be my sons. So it's a little weird to kind of really be passionate about basketball, particularly because I'm from an area where pro sports is everything, as you can tell by my hat. You guys learned this about me. The NBA playoffs are my favorite sporting event. And I like all sorts of sporting event, but for me, this is the one that I think goes all the way back to childhood for me. From the very first game NBA playoff ever remember vividly sitting for was game 1 of the 1996 NBA Finals, where Jordan hit that game winner on the in the left mid-range area and pumped his fist, and I was hooked. I was hooked. NBA fan ever since. At that time, there was this like DVD collection on Jordan's career. It was 6 DVDs, and it had all. My friend had it. I watched that, and so I was hip to everything Jordan. I was late to the game, but I was hip to it. I knew greatness when I saw it. And ever since then, the NBA playoffs, the NBA was my number one go-to sporting event. And it's here. And although the NBA product has dipped a little bit, the NBA playoffs are still top notch. You still have the best athletes, the best players competing. And this year's actually really exciting. You have a lot of really great upstart teams, a lot of great established teams, a lot of players who were drafted 6-7 years ago, now really in the peak of their powers, competing against some late veterans that are still hanging on, still doing their thing. So I want to get into it with you guys and drop some predictions. There'll be some that I elaborate a little bit more because they're more intriguing. And there'll be some that I'll just talk about real quick. But I'm going to go ahead and cap everything off with a winner prediction as well as in how many games. And we'll come back in a few episodes or in the next episode and see how right I was round to round, all the way through to the NBA Finals. Okay, so let's start with the more least intriguing matchups. I'll jump between East and West. I'll start at the top of the bracket for both conferences. OKC, number 1 seed versus the number 8 seed, the Memphis Grizzlies. This should be a fun watch because although it's a 1-8 matchup, there's a lot of names on the court. SGA, John Morant, a very gritty, tough Grizzly team that, they're probably out to at least, set a tone for next season for themselves. And OKC, a team who's been on top of the league the entire year, looking to cast any doubt that they're the number one seed. They probably want to get this done 4 or 5 games. So those two energies meeting should make for very compelling game 1, game 2. But I think obviously OKC should take care of business. I'm going to go ahead and call it 5, maybe 6. But let's call it 5. OKC in 5 in 5 tough games, but they'll control throughout. SGA, it really all is dependent on SGA being SGA, which I think he will be. It'll get tougher for him as the playoffs go on. But I think the front runner of MVP shows out. His teammates, they come out, they do their thing. Memphis is in a lot of turmoil. They fired their coach. John Morant still kind of caught up in his ego a little bit with the things that he's been going through recently. So it should be fun, entertaining. There should definitely be some dope highlights. I know John Morant will have a moment or two where you're just like, whoa, what was that? And I know Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is going to be just a mid-range killer, really setting the pace for his team. But OKC is just too good defensively and just has a lot of confidence coming in. This is, I think, a good test for them as far as competitiveness goes, getting their competitive juices going for the playoffs. But should be easy riding. I'm going OKC in 5. All right, that's a set on the East. That number 1 versus number 8 matchup. The Heat, again, one of the worst teams in the league, were number 10 and find themselves in the number 8 seed after beating Chicago and then Atlanta in the play-in. Just says a lot about how much culture matters. Just the Heat with Eric Spoelstra, even when they're bad, they still know how to win those kind of games. And teams like Atlanta and teams like Chicago, they don't have any culture at the moment. Although Chicago did provide us with an amazing offense this year, and that game against the Lakers where Giddey hit that half-court 3, that was the most exciting game of the year, hands down. I wish I had been watching it live. The highlights had me at the edge of my seat. However, they're matching up against Cleveland, the number 1 seed all year in the East, and it should be easy pickings. Cleveland's they've got too much length, they got too much talent, and they're really playing. They're a cohesive team. They're a unit that likes playing together. There's no superstar. They're just a bunch of really good players who play for each other and play in a town that loves their team. So I expect Cleveland to take care of business in 5 as well. I don't see that. Maybe even a sweep. But I'm going to go ahead and give Miami and the Heat culture some grace and call it Cleveland in 5. All right. So now down to the next least intriguing matchups. Although I think on the West this is much more intriguing than on the East, the 2 and the 7. We'll go ahead and start with the East on this one. The Celtics, my boys, getting into it. Let's go. Let's go. Sorry, I had to have a moment there. Versus the Orlando Magic. I don't know much about the Magic. I hear that they're pretty good defensively, but it does not matter. The Celtics are too deep. They are too well coached. It's going to be Celtics in 4 for this one for me. It's a little bit of a homer opinion there, but I just think what I really do want to talk about the Celtics is the bigger scheme. This matchup and the East is really all about them. They're looking to repeat as champions. They've had a great mindset all year. They've handled their stars' health really well. Porzingis, Tatum, Brown. They've handled Al Horford wonderfully. Their bench has grown so much. I mean, they were good last year, but now they can start. Multiple guys on the bench can start on most NBA teams, especially Peyton Pritchard, Sam Hauser maybe. They just got great complementary players. And what I want to talk about the Celtics actually kind of zooms out a little bit. Something that I notice in sports is the best franchises, once the DNA is set as to who they are, they find ways throughout the decades to repeat this, to re-find those same kind of athletes that lend themselves to the makeup of that. And the Celtics are at the peak of that. So I, of course, as a huge Celtics fan, I tuned in to the documentary on HBO done by the guys who did The Last Dance and Bill Simmons about the Celtics. It's called Celtic City. It's fantastic. I think they do a wonderful job of authentic, factual documentation of the history of the Celtics and the history of Boston and the relationship there without demonization, and give nuance to the story. You know, one of the little facts that always that really stuck out to me was when in the peak of the Celtics-Lakers rivalry, when finally the Lakers started beating the Celtics in the 80s, the entire country was rooting for the Lakers. And it was because the Celtics were perceived as a white team. And that version of the Celtics did have very standout white players, great white players. McHale, Bird, obviously, who I still think is the most underrated NBA player in NBA history simply because of his skin color. But if you watch him play, he was unbelievable. But it's fun. So this thing stood out to me in regards to the history of Celtics because Boston was a over 30% black city. LA was a 10% black city, yet LA was perceived as the black team and the Celtics perceived as the white team because the LA had mostly black players and their style of play was mostly what African-American players were known to do. And the Celtics had, it's funny because they had similar styles, except the Lakers had the flash of Magic, Cooper, Kareem, and the Celtics had the grit, version of it. But it was very similar, beautiful basketball. So, man, I wish I would have been there to witness some of those games and be in person, because I thought that's some of the finest basketball ever played. But my point I'm getting at is it's quite apparent that once a team knows their DNA, if they're able to stick through it, they tend to have success and their city tends to support them. So for the Celtics, is they never have the best player in the league. And this version of the Celtics doesn't. They never have the number 2 best player in the league. I mean, the 80s Celtics did. They had Larry Bird. They had the number 1 or 2, arguably. But mostly what they have is a collection of great players who are their DNA, despite their excellent skills and talent, their DNA is geared towards team first. And this iteration of the Celtics is just another version of that. And the city is responding to them. So if you look at Tatum, Brown, this team is just so deep with players who just make plays at the right moment and are selfless, and they play beautiful basketball. They share the ball beautifully. The Celtics now are playing a modern version of that, which lives beyond the 3-point line. But if you watch the games and the highlights, it's so similar to the way the 86 team played, just within the 3-point line, the same way that the 2008 team played with KG, Paul, and Ray Allen a little past their prime. But they were savants at that point in basketball, and the way that team played, who won 66 games that year. Then the 70s teams who were Havlicek and I believe JoJo White, and then even then you go back to the 60s team with Cousy and Russell and Hyson. Each one of those teams, they always had this collection of players who were committed to playing a certain kind of basketball that was just beautiful. Sharing, pass, cut, rebound, go hard, dive on the floor. It's a DNA that is unique to the Celtics, that was created by Red Auerbach and has lived throughout time. And if you hear Brad Stevens, if you hear Coach Mazzulla, if you hear Tatum and Brown, it's like an echo. of all the past stars. And I think the best franchises in any sport are able to understand what has established themselves as their identity and their DNA, the DNA, and it's usually a combination of the identity of the city and the identity of the original architects, and they're able to recreate that throughout time. Wanted to get that out about my Celtics. This Celtic team is true to form in the Celtic history, in the Celtic DNA. They are extremely special, and I'm rooting for them not only because of my team, because I think a second title will really solidify them in NBA history as one of the great NBA teams of all time. And I want that for them. They've been at the top of the league for many, many years now, and many would say they should have more championships at this point. But if they can win this year, that'll really go far in solidifying their place in Celtics history and in NBA history. Now, moving on to the other side of the bracket. This is actually a really intriguing matchup. The Rockets versus the Warriors, experience versus youth. I'm going to go tread light here. I want to see the Warriors win because I'm not sure if they go on and play the winners of the I guess they would play the winners of the Nuggets and the Clippers. But I would love to see LeBron go up against Curry one more time. Just the NBA history historian in me. But I think on paper, the Rockets should beat the Warriors. It's probably going to go 6-7 games. I'm going to call it 7 games simply because of the inexperience of the Rockets. But they've got all the tools to beat the Warriors. The Warriors, though, they've got a great 2-minute drill. If it's close late, they just know how to get it done. And now they got Jimmy Butler. Steph Curry, to me, one of my top favorite players to watch ever. I think he is the standout player of his generation. LeBron may be the biggest name, but I think the most impact culturally has been done by Curry. And it's a fun matchup. And I think young teams, for some reason, they just stop shooting well in the playoffs. This is the big fear with OKC as well when they get deeper in the playoffs, is that will their role players be able to make the same shots, or will they have to suffer some more heartbreak before they cross over? So I got the Rockets in 7 games. I had 6, but I'm gonna call it 7. 1 or 2 of these series always go 7. So yeah. Now moving up to the 3-6 matchup, I'm going to go ahead and start with the Knicks versus the Pistons. I live in New York, so it's cool to have the Knicks in the playoffs because the energy here is vibrant. Knicks fans, I give them credit. They're cool, man. They love the Knicks. They ride for the Knicks. And this Knicks team has been up and down. They've had a good season, but they don't do well against great teams. They have no wins against the top teams in the East or the West. So that's not good. And this is a tough draw for them because the Pistons, they got nothing to lose, and they're tough. They're going to play tough. There's definitely going to be a couple of fights in this series for sure. With Isaiah, with that crazy dude on the Pistons, I think his name's Isaiah, and Karl Anthony Towns or Mikal Bridges. There's going to be a lot of chippiness going on in this series, and I think it's going to be tougher. The Knicks should win, and I'm going to go ahead with the Knicks in 6. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Detroit push them really hard. Those will be hard-fought games. I'll be surprised if they win. I just don't think Detroit has enough offensive firepower, and the Knicks have home court. So as long as the Knicks can stay healthy and Tom Thibodeau doesn't run them to the ground or hasn't already, I don't watch every Knicks game. But Knicks in 6. We're going to go with Knicks in 6. And to the other side of this bracket, we got the Lakers versus the Timberwolves. Now, this is, I think, the most must-see TV series of the NBA playoffs. And I think the Lakers will win in 6. But man, this is the opportunity of a lifetime for a guy like Ant-Man. every year in the NBA playoffs or any playoffs, there's really 1, 2, maybe 3 teams that are really competing for a championship. This year, I would say there's 3 with a 4 lingering, and that it's Celtics, Cleveland, OKC, and the Lakers. I would say mainly because of the star power that they possess, and how they've been playing. They're right on that cusp of like, hey, we're going for the whole thing. We want the title. I don't know if they'll be able to do it. I don't know if this team has been together long enough compared to a team like OKC or Cleveland and Boston to get that done. But they definitely got something going on. But then the rest of the playoffs are opportunities to jump on the national stage and really make a statement. And I think the real NBA fan knows there are certain guys that you judge by whether they won the championship or not. And then everybody else you judge about how did they play within the series of the playoffs. Because you know they don't have that team around them, but you still want to see them compete. And I think this is where a lot of people wrongfully judge Jordan's early run, where he didn't win a championship. He didn't have the team to win a championship. But if you look back at those playoff series early in his career against the Pistons and Cleveland and Boston, Jordan was a competitive monster. He averaged over 30 every playoff. He always improved his numbers. And that's what you want to see. And that's what I'm hoping to see out of Ant-Man here. He does not have the team to compete with the Lakers. But if he comes out and he turns on his inner D Wade, his inner MJ, D Wade in the finals against the Mavericks, this can go 7 just based on him. And that will take his legacy to the next level. So I'm really hoping that and hoping to see. I know everyone wants Lakers to win, and I got Lakers in 6. But I would love to see Ant-Man absolutely come out to send the message to his front office, to his fan base, and to the league. Hey man, I ain't nothing to be fucked with. And that would be amazing because I think he's one of the more fun talents to see and watch. I'm going to try to watch as many of these games as possible of the series. Outside of the Celtics, this is probably the series that I'll tune into the most. Here's my bias. I would love to see them beat the Lakers. But I think Luka is in the Mavericks' head. He torched them in the not the Mavericks, in the Timberwolves' head. He torched them in the playoffs last year, sent them home, and I think they still remember that. And it's just going to be too much to have Luka and then LeBron and then AR-15. Just too much star power for the Minnesota Timberwolves. But if Ant-Man can show up, that'll just make it that much more compelling. Maybe even push it 7. But Lakers in 6. That's what I got. All right, moving up further into the bracket. The last 2 matchups of this first round. Let's go ahead and start with the Bucks versus the Pacers. I'm going to go ahead. This is a division rival. They play 4 times a year, and now they're playing this themselves. So this one's going to get competitive, chippy. There's going to be probably a game or two that comes down to the last shot, a big moment. I'm going to go ahead. Last year, Indiana took care of business against the Bucks, and I think the Bucks remember that. So I'm going to go ahead and say the Bucks in 6. I think Giannis is going to try to reestablish his name in the league. He knows he's not going to win a championship this year, but this is a good opportunity against a competitive team, against a division rival, to remind the league what you're made of. And if Dame Lillard can come back later in the series, he isn't playing though. That's tough. You know what? I'm going to switch my pick. I'm going to go the Pacers in 7. Pacers in 7. Maybe I regret that, but I think that they just have more of a complete team. I've watched the Pacers a couple times against the Celtics. They have really good offense. We'll see what Giannis shows up if he's able to shoot a high percentage. But I'm going to go Pacers in 6. I'm not even sure what their record against each other was this year. But screw it. Taking a little bit of risk here. Why not? Why not? Pacers in 6. On the other side of that, the most intriguing matchup of the first round, the Nuggets versus the Clippers. This matchup obviously includes the best player in the world in Nikola Jokic, top 5 center of all time. I think the only thing that keeps him from being number 1 or 2 is that he's not as defensively dominant as the others were, as Bill Russell was, and as Wilt Chamberlain was. Those are the number 1 and 2 centers for me. Or even Shaq. Shaq was much better defensively and just as much of a force offensively, although Jokic is more skilled. But outside of that, man, Jokic is, he's better than Hakeem to me because he can do more things than Hakeem could. Although Hakeem was better defensively. Hakeem was probably the better scorer, but Jokic can. He's a point center. He's a first point center, I think, since Wilt Chamberlain. People like to say he's the first point center ever. That's not true. Actually, the original offense of the NBA ran through the center. The center was the most important. It wasn't until the 80s, late 70s, where it then trickled down to the forward with Dr. J, Larry Bird, and then we had this like mutant in Magic Johnson, and then in the 80s it really transformed to a guard-driven league. But before that, it was a center-driven league, and the original point centers on which offense ran around, get the ball to them at the free throw line, let everybody cut and move around them, and let them make the pass. It was a center. Bill Walton, Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell, the list goes on and on about how important that position has been historically in the NBA. Getting back to the matchup, though, this is the best matchup because it features a 3-time MVP, and then it features a 1-time MVP on the other side, along with a 2-time Finals MVP that seems to be back in form in Kawhi Leonard and James Harden. I think both of Kawhi Leonard and James Harden are motivated because they've seen a lot of things, a lot of shit been talked about them over the last couple years after being top 5 players in the NBA, first team All-NBA. This is a tough one, but I'm going to go ahead and call the Clippers in 7. This is definitely going to go 7. The Clippers are just better defensively. I think they're playing better right now. There's some turmoil with the firing of the Nuggets coach. And I think the only thing that's going to keep and take the 7 and keep the Nuggets in the game is that Nikola Jokic is probably going to go off. And I think this is another series where a superstar knows he's not going to win a championship, but he wants to make sure that his legacy remains. He's one of the top players in the leagues and still one of the top performers in the playoffs. Jokic will keep that in mind. I think Murray will come to play as well. This will go 7. Denver does have the home court advantage. So who knows? Maybe get in the 7th game is a toss-up, but I just think the Clippers are the better team right now. And so I'm going to go with the Clippers. All right, y'all. There you have it. Those are my picks for the NBA playoffs that are starting today. In a couple hours from me recording it. I know probably nobody will see this, but I'm grateful for the ones who do. This is fun for me. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Back to the Game Sportscast NBA Playoff Edition. My name is Samuel Maria. I am grateful. I am thankful. As always, remember to like, subscribe, and share if you're digging the content. And thanks so much. Till the next one. Enjoy the games. Peace and love.